So these are one of my favorite projectiles from all of Bionicle. By their nature, they bounce around unpredictably with these rubber spikes, and I love it. But what's interesting about these is because they bounce around, they have this sort of random trajectory that I wanted to design a vehicle to work with. Now, this is where things get difficult. I had the idea for a specific land vehicle, as all of the projects that I'm working on currently for this Bara Magna series have to deal with land vehicles, air vehicles, and dinosaurs, with some small side builds in there as well. But the idea that I had specifically was a catapult type vehicle, and this was going to fill the same sort of role as the Baroness set from 2009 Bionicle. But I didn't think about it much deeper than that. The reason I say it like that is because I have a chariot platform that I've already designed that I like quite a lot, and I figured I would use that platform with a catapult function built using this half cocoon or flower pod from the Hero Factory Invasion from Below series. The idea being that you can fit multiple of these Thornax in here like a little basket and then attach it to a catapult and fling them. They all fire at once. They all kind of go around at random. That's a really cool premise, but then they're on the ground haphazard all around, and you could pick them up yourself. That's fine, but I had this idea of what if this mechanism does all of it, right? It launches the Thornax, it picks up the Thornax, and it reloads itself. That's the idea. That's a little bit more difficult to think about. My initial thought was that this vehicle was going to have two functions, that catapult function and then these hammers on the side that would come down, very similar to the Moltor's Lava Crusher Lego set from Nexonites. And that was a cool premise, but I can only imagine how frustrating a design like this was. This is what I came up with for the hammer, but instead of a hammer, it is a grabber. It grabs Thornax. It's really cool, but the problem, if this was attached to the movement of the vehicle, meaning that it goes down in a cycle because the wheels are moving in that same cycle, then suddenly I must align that cycle to land on top of the Thornax and not be a little bit off, because if I'm off, well, that's going to be frustrating, right? So as cool of a function as that may have been on its own, it's not enough. Now, it's not to say I can't use this. I wouldn't scrap this design. It's a fun little build. It's got the little tooth here so it can let go of the Thornax easily, but maybe I make that a weapon instead. And instead of doing this sort of cyclical grabber, I came up with a different idea. And in fact, this idea was inspired by someone on the Discord. I don't remember who, and I don't remember what conversation exactly spawned it, but a lot of people suggested that I build this catapult on the back of a Rahi, and that's not something I wanted to do because I wanted this to be a true vehicle. But that doesn't mean that a Rahi can't be involved. So then I started thinking to myself, well, what kind of Rahi would this be? What role would it play? It could pull the trebuchet, but then it's not doing anything that hasn't already been done, right? The Baroness set from 2009 has a Rahi that you can't see it, but it is up there behind Scyther, behind Matanui, and it's interesting because that build, as cool as it is, doesn't really do anything for that set itself. So I thought to myself, how could I do this differently? What about a straddle car? If you're not sure what that is, it is essentially a vehicle that goes over something else and then interacts with whatever is below it, typically. Not always, of course, but my thought was, well, I designed this for picking up Thornax, right? It funnels Thornax into the center, it kind of grips onto their little teeth, and then it can lift them, usually one at a time in this case. I would love for it to be more. That is rather difficult just because of how the Thornax are shaped and what they are made of, and of course balancing that with an amount of pieces and something that works consistently. But the idea was that this could scoop up these Thornax and put them back inside of a reservoir of some kind. Now, originally, the idea was that this was going to be a Rahi motif, meaning it wouldn't actually be a living thing, but it would just look like something living. Until someone mentioned it being the catapult. And then I thought to myself, well, I don't care about the idea of the Rahi itself being the catapult, but what if this straddle car had the catapult on it? And this is just a Rahi that's very good at picking up Thornax. Suddenly, a bit of world building starts to pop up just from the existence of that set, much in the same way as the Baroness set, right? A chariot that has been fit for war, essentially, and tethered to the back of some creature. That's a really cool concept, as simple as the premise might be. And this one, to me, felt so unique, right? There are, all kinds of fantasy movies, fandoms, whatever, that use straddle type designs. I don't know what else to call it. You've seen things like this in like Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits and things like that, where they have like a thing built on top of a giant elephant or whatever their creature is called. I do apologize for not knowing the name, but this is kind of like that, a little bit different, and it doesn't matter the differences, but the idea at the end of the day being that this is some wheeled vehicle that can go over the top of this either insect or mammal-like animal, and this is a different planet, of course, so it can be its own thing that has wheels on it that the animal can then just place its feet on a little platform or something, or connect to the vehicle in some way, be picked up, and now the head of the animal can be used to scoop up the Thornax. The animal can tip them back, and then a reservoir can catch them and funnel them into the basket for the catapult. That's such a fun premise to me, because now it insinuates that this Rahi exists is very tailored to one job specifically, picking up Thornax, and this world has decided to, rather than build their own version of it, just build a plow, essentially, a vehicle that goes over top of it. Maybe at some point it was used for other things, not a catapult, but it had been outfitted for this war or whatever since then. I love the idea of that. It feels more scrappy, too. As I've mentioned, some of the villages that I'm trying to recreate, I'm trying to give them different aesthetics, right? To set each of the villages apart, because although these villages are inclined to align with different elements, they don't really have those elemental powers, right? And so what sets these villages apart, to me anyway, is the relationship that these villages have with their craft, right? And so I called Tijin, for example, the water village. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it sounds nice. But I called that one a bit more of like a high craft village, which is why I gave them something like the Ornithopter, which is very well polished, in my opinion, and put together and looks excellent, versus something like this where I have the idea of a scrappy vehicle, something that's a lot more open, similar to the Thornatus, for example, right? Really cool vehicle, a lot of gaps in it, and I think those gaps actually work in its favor because it feels scrappy. It feels as though this was just put together quick to do one thing, and it does it really well. That's the premise, and I love this idea so much. So that's kind of what I'm going to work on from this point, at least for this medium-sized vehicle. I don't want it to necessarily be the large vehicle, though I'm absolutely okay with it being so. But I figure the large land-based vehicle, I want to be something truly special. This just feels special. So if it ends up evolving into that large vehicle, then I'm perfectly fine with that, because it's so different from the large vehicles we had before. It's different from the XLR, obviously. It's different from even the Scopio set, which does have that sort of animalistic motif without being an actual living animal, at least as far as I know. So I love this concept in general. Outside of that, anyway, before we end this video, I wanted to mention really quick that there are a couple of other things that I want to do for this project as well, including these sort of side builds, right? I don't want to just fill out the world with these vehicles, but I also want to make sure that as I do so, each little build that I contribute is adding life to this world, right? And so I designed, for example, this little, what was originally a butterfly build that I turned into a bat, and maybe it will turn into like a little tiny pterodactyl-like build or something. It's a very simple premise, very few pieces going into something like that. And the idea is like, it's too small to be its own box set, obviously. It's too big to come with any sort of like canister build. So why not have it included with one of the vehicles? And so I have this flying vehicle, maybe include it with something like the Ornithopter or one of the other ones as well. That's neat because that starts to give you that battle in a box thing that LEGO is much more known for nowadays. It's not something that they did quite so often back in the mid to late 2000s, but it is something that they do all of the time now, including even with Bionicle Generation 2 with things like the skull spiders and the little bear traps, right? How those each involved a little bit of an extra assembly on the side to give you more to that world. That's kind of what I'm going for here. Another build that I did is this little glider right here. Very simple, has a thorn axe on the front end of it, can connect to the back of the character via this axle here, or it can connect to the hands with these fold out axles on the side, and a character can glide around with it. Now you have a little mini air vehicle for just doing whatever you want. It's very few pieces as well, so it fills out only a little bit of a parts count. Obviously, it would include a character with it, so maybe that's something for a medium or large set, but I love that idea. So I'm really happy with all of this. The last thing I want to show off before ending the video is more creative uses, one more creative use specifically of the thorn axe, which is this right here. I designed this yesterday, just playing around with parts. There's a little fuzz on there. And the idea I had was to build a dragon head where the thorn axe launcher was actually built into it. This actually works, and this is only like 5 pieces. Now, I'm probably going to lose this. Okay, good. It didn't fire that far that time. It actually fires really well, though, with a lot of power, so I'm really happy with it. And it's literally just clicking this. So let me get an axle really quick so I can show you the build for this. And then we're going to go ahead and end this video, I believe. But if you guys are enjoying this video, let me get this axle out of here. Then make sure you are subscribed. It really does help out the channel. This is all that build is. Just these 2 things and an axle. I guess that's 6 pieces then, huh? But yeah, you just stick the axle right through this top pinhole and right through these eyes here. So let me go ahead and align that. If you want to join the conversation, check out the Discord. It's in the description below. It is, of course, free to join. And as you can see here, a lot of people have inspired a lot of things to do with this, this whole project in general. But yeah, that's it. And so you can also join the conversation in the comments here, as well as check out my Instagram or Patreon if you want to support the channel, get some perks, also in the description below. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully you guys are having a wonderful, nearly New Year's. Last few days of 2023. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.